Even though I'm still recovering from my ear infection, I am going to make a video for this thing because I am currently tidying up my bench, and this thing is so gigantic I just don't have room for it. So I need to make a video of it, strip it for whatever parts I want, and throw it away because it is freaking huge. It's actually 26.5 inches deep, despite being a standard 19-inch rack. It's over like 63 centimeters, so it's a little crazy. This is a Riverbed Steelhead. I believe it's the 2050. I mean, it has a long model number here of an SHA-02050-M, but I think it's just called the 2050. I may find another thing somewhere else. It has this nice front flip down bezel on it. I've disconnected it all, so it doesn't actually flip down, but it's actually quite nice. It's got like a real metal grill on it and light pipes for all the LEDs on it. This particular unit comes with 4 hard drives. Now, when I purchased this on eBay, I was told that it was dead, which is true, but he said that he plugged it in and it made a burning smell when he plugged it in, so I assumed the power supplies were faulty, and I took the risk, and I think I spent $40 including shipping on this thing. The 4 hard drives that it came with were all Western Digital RE2 or 3, I can't remember, server drives that were all 250 gig. All of them were broken. They all had the click of death. It's kind of the common one I get with Western Digital, where the drive works fine, but when it's idle, it sits there going like it's accessing something even though there's nothing actually being read. It will do it even if it's just hooked up to power. And after some back and forth with Western Digital, they decided to take them all. Now the cool thing is they were all still under warranty, because Western Digital server drives come with a 5-year warranty, and these still had, I believe, between 6 months and a year on them. So I sent all 4 in. They sent me 4 back, all 500 gig, and I sold them along with another exact same model 400 or 250 gig that I sent back. So I had 500 gigs, and yeah, I sold them all on eBay for almost $200 total. So this made some profit, which is very rare. But this is, from what I can tell, a Dell design. I don't have too much like hands-on experience with Dell models, but I know previous Riverbed models do employ Dell computers, and they just rebadge it. What the Riverbeds do, I believe, are mostly wide area network optimization and things like that, so you can make the most of your super expensive high-speed internet connection for your corporation. This thing, I believe, is still sold on their website for something absurd like $23,000. It's a Riverbed. I'd never really heard of them before. They're in San Francisco, I believe. Although, oddly enough, I did see a guy walking around in the New York City subway about a month ago with a Riverbed shirt. I should have asked him if he actually worked for them or not, or just somehow got the shirt, or maybe it was a jacket. Anyway, this thing's gigantic. I need it ripped apart, so let's get to it. Around back we have dual redundant power supplies. They're hot swappable and easily removed. 2 USB ports, a remote port, that's for remote management. An auxiliary port, I guess that's configurable. Primary, I believe these are all just Ethernet. A serial port, space for 2 cards, and if you look, there's actually stickers on the top that say slot 1, slot 2, and they've got like WAN, LAN designations. So these are obviously for a 4-port Ethernet controller option per slot. And then you've got dual LAN and dual WAN ports. With the case removed, you can see the general layout. You've got a riser with two PCIe 16 times slots, left, right. Memory slots. Now you can see there's solder pads for 4 additional memory slots. So before we take this up, we already know that this board can support dual processors, but that option hasn't been installed on this particular model. There's big heatsink covering what I presume is the platform controller hub. Got a whole bunch of these micro relays that we'll get into. There's a little SODIMM style management controller. There's a nice big shroud covering the processor, and as you can see, there's a little divider so you can get dual processors installed using the same shroud, but clearly they have not installed a second processor socket on this model. There are a ton of these very nice shock dampened fans, or vibration dampening fans that you can see they're all loose, and that's intentional. That's so that they don't vibrate quite as much inside the case. This particular model comes with a nice, very nice passive heatsink. The motherboard, the riser, even the it's called an eUSB disc-on module. We'll go into that later. Everything in here is branded Riverbed. So I'm not sure if they do actually make their own or they just rebrand it or what, but everything on here is labeled Riverbed. Moving along, we've got the backplane for the 4 serial ATA hard drives. And there's some miscellaneous controller stuff up here, and the power board here that splits off and goes to the actual motherboard. I don't believe any of this can actually be reused in another computer aside from the memory and the processor. Even the fans use these teeny tiny connectors instead of standard ones. The motherboard isn't actually like a normal ATX shape. It does kind of look like a large server ATX board, but there's actually this protrusion down here that comes out on an angle. And yeah, so it's kind of like a weird P-shaped board almost. And yeah, so basically everything in this is garbage unless it's working, and in this case it is not. I have tried powering this up. I've tried everything I can think of besides actually like swapping out a power supply or, you know, breaking out a multimeter. I can't be bothered. This thing does not meet my needs for an actual server or anything, so I have no intention of trying to fight this thing to get working. Basically, I've tried using both power supplies. I've tried using just one. I've tried using just one in each socket. I've opened them up. Nothing's blown in them. They all look great. I connect them to power. This thing, when it's sitting here idle, pulls 20 watts, which is insane. The board, when plugged in, the only thing you get is the blinking of the management card, implying that it's actually starting up, but I cannot get it to actually boot. There's hardware reset and power pin push buttons here. There's controls on the front. None of it wants to boot this thing, and I've even tried fiddling with some of the jumpers, and it just doesn't work. There's this little rubber standoff they glue right here, I guess to keep a PCIe card from bouncing around. That's kind of funny. The board itself, I did notice kind of a burnt smell in this section, so I'm guessing something to do with the circuitry for the remote management card is fried. I did try booting it without the card, and it still doesn't work. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start ripping out as much of this as I can so we can actually take a look at the board without the giant case in the way, because this thing's taking up my whole damn table. It's a shame I can't use these fans in anything else. As you can see, they use these micro connectors. I have seen these in other rack mount things, but they're usually not on any of the boards that I tend to use, so I'm kind of stuck tossing out all these fans. As you can see, each connector is provisioned for 2 PWM fans, because many modules and servers have a double fan design. So this one connector would power both fans. As you can see, this is actually a removable module on its little rubber feet. It's just a plastic cage around a standard SanAce fan. SanAce makes pretty good fans, at least from what I've seen. So yeah, it's a shame I'm going to have to chuck all 5 of these out. Now that I got the couple screws that were holding all the boards in, I got out the little LED front panel board. Yeah, it's just a couple little drivers. It's connected via ribbon cable. It's even branded Riverbed, San Francisco, California. Yeah, it's nothing too special, just little light pipes over some surface mount LEDs. Pretty boring. Next up is the very, very long serial ATA backplane. This also is branded Riverbed on the back. Focus. It's got some pretty big caps on it. This thing connects to the motherboard via this extremely expensive high-density, high-speed connector with a secondary connector for power. This also has the ribbon cable connection to the front for all the LEDs. One thing I noticed is that there's this blue serial ATA connector along with, it looks like a 4-pin fan power connector. There was nothing hooked up to these, so it's possible in some models there is an E-serial ATA connector on the front, or perhaps another hard drive, maybe in a 2U case. Maybe there's another hard drive that's the boot drive. So, you know, nothing much else on these. They're all kind of, I think these are all just drivers for the LEDs. And, you know, decoding what it needs to decode for hard drive access lights and stuff like that, and failure, that kind of stuff. Plus, it's probably some stuff for hot swapping. So yeah, not too interesting, this board, but that connector, man, that thing was not cheap, I can tell you that. Next, I'm going to look at the power supplies a little bit. These are Delta model power supplies. They're 650 watts each. Now, this is a pretty damn narrow power supply for 650 watts. So this thing's pretty impressive. I mean, look at the size of the tabs on that to just get that current running through. I mean, it's pretty crazy, this thing. It's amazing how they can just fit it into such a narrow design, but there's how, double fans. That turns this thing into a big wind tunnel. This is the small board that is inside the case, and this, I believe, handles all the soft power and whatnot. Mytech. Didn't see that before. Maybe that's the OEM of this part. But these are the fancy-ass connectors that the hard drive's actually made into, or sorry, the power supply is made into. I didn't see any damage on this board. I didn't see any damage inside the power supply, so I'm not really sure why this thing won't budge unless it's just the power on the motherboard. It's just fried. As you can see, it branches off to a nice standard ATX connector with a nice mesh cover on it. And oddly enough, this is just soldered on this side, but you can even see that the connectors or wires are all nicely labeled, which is unusual. There's just some power circuitry on this. I'm no expert, but I assume this is all just for starting it up. There's also a cable, a 5-pin cable running over to the motherboard. I believe this is what the remote remote management card, this thing, uses to actually start the system. That, or this is actually like a trickle power running to the card, so that it can have power even though the main ATX power is dead. But I'm not 100% sure on that. It's probably just for communication to have this thing start up. I've taken out all the screws. I do really like the design of these power supplies. You just take out all the screws, this slides forward and then slides right out, and there you go. The whole cover's off, and this is all nicely wrapped up in insulation. And there you go. Huge, huge Nippon Chemicone filter cap. And as you can see, it's got a vertical digital boards. The fan assembly is its own little module. I don't know if I got all the screws out. Oh no, okay, here we go. See, it's just a double stacked fan. Very few blades. Maybe it's designed for really high static pressure. I'm not too sure. This just runs to the board using the little aforementioned micro connector, and as you can see, it is fully populated for the two fans, so it can run over one wire. On the inside, everything looks good. I mean, you've got all the nice input protection. Everything's nicely tucked away. It leads to, there's some power devices under there. All the filtering. I think these have active power factor correction. There's a relay tucked in there. There's the big filter cap again. Some big inductors and or chokes. Transformer of some kind, I believe. I'm not sure. That might be a... I'm not sure. It's got these two wires. Maybe it's current sense or something. Not sure. And then there's this little ribbon style connector running from one digital board to the other. That's kind of funny. Oh no, this is actually just a standoff. It is actually a board, and it's got circuits on it, but it's actually this teeny tiny little PCB right there. It is a pretty impressive power supply, and they're the main power devices, I believe. There's a whole row of them on this little heatsink. It is pretty impressive. I do like this thing, but unfortunately it's not something I can use. And the other one looks the same. It doesn't look like there's any damage to this thing. So again, it leads me to believe it's the motherboard on it. I pried off one of the digital boards just to see what these power devices were. They're all Fairchild, you know, kind of standard stuff. There's 4 of them here, 4 of them here. One thing I did notice is that these ones are all nicely in a row, but these ones they had to put in staggered. No idea why they did that, although I did notice that this side needs caps, so it's possible that they just did it to line up with the capacitors. But look, it was a little funny. Let me see if I can, maybe I can pry. Oh, there we go. Oh, there's still a piece of plastic covering this. Let's see if I can open it up. It looks like they're just power transistors. Nothing too interesting. These are all just soldered on, by the way, but since I have no plans on reusing this thing, they come off quite easily. This is a PCI Express riser. As you can see, there's actually 2 pieces. It's not a single board. These are all 16 times slots. I would imagine it's actually electrically like an 8 or something. One thing I did notice when I initially had this thing apart is that there's a little case intrusion micro switch here. Yes, I did try taping this down to see if it was the reason why it wouldn't boot. Did not work, but I figured it was worth a shot. But yeah, even these things are labeled Riverbed Technology, San Francisco. I wonder if this would work. Ooh, offset PCIe slot. This is a little remote management card. As you can see, it's in like a SODIMM style package. I don't recognize any of the chips. The even the sticker is branded Riverbed. Assembled in Taiwan. Yeah, these are pretty standard. Supermicro makes a whole bunch of these. Dell makes them. You know, I don't think they're ever interchangeable with one another. But one thing that's actually kind of impressive is, you may not be able to see it, but this is a 6-layer board just for this little thing. Probably not too cheap. Since this board's so big, I'm going to do it in sections. Over here is the voltage regulator module, and it's actually supplying the power to the processor, but usually it's a lot closer. I don't know why, but on this model of motherboard it's quite far away. There's also the RAM slots. This comes with 3 filled for some reason, which is a little unusual. It's they're all 2 gig PC5300 ECC memory. Even this is Riverbed branded, but yeah, it comes with 6 total, which is not bad. It's a little odd that it's 6 instead of 8, but hey, what are you gonna do? Over here's the processor. Again, there's, oh dear God. You know, it's funny, I really did not look under this first. I just simply popped off the springs. Okay, I think I may know why this thing doesn't work. Right. I'm guessing that is not normal. Wow. Completely blown out. I guess this is the voltage regulator for the processor. I was thinking it was down here, but this must be supplying power to all the Ethernet cards or something. But holy crap. That is insane. Well, I think I know why it doesn't work. Wow. Completely blown. Take a look at the processor anyway, even though I can't really resell this. I wouldn't feel comfortable enough selling this thing knowing that the voltage regulator for the CPU blew out. The processor is a single E5405. It's a quad-core 2 gigahertz 64-bit Intel chip, of course. They have 12 megs of cache, 1333 megahertz bus. They're one of the slightly more modern 45 nanometer chips, and I believe it's 65 watts rated. It's also got no hyperthreading and no turbo, so it's not that new because they didn't start adding those to the Xeon line until later. But it is a nice chip. I don't feel comfortable selling it. I'll just put it in my big pile of gold-plated stuff for eBay sale later. What a shame. This is the area of the motherboard with the dual 16 times PCI slots, PCI Express slots, and all the 4 Ethernet ports. Now there's a million little micro relays here that I will happily desolder later, which leads me to believe that this has a bypassing function where you can drop this out of the network if there's a problem. I disconnected the little tabs on this guy, and they're just Ethernet controllers made by Intel. Nothing too special. Under the fairly large heatsink, I found the main memory controller. This is the Intel 5100 memory controller hub chipset. This thing is gigantic. I mean, that's the quad-core Xeon. It's actually a bit bigger than the processor. It's massive. This is designed for dual, it's basically 2 memory controllers in one. It can control 2 banks of memory up to like something crazy like 32 gigs each processor. And yeah, this thing is a big chip. I mean, there are few chips on a motherboard that are this large. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell, but it is actually a really beefy chip, and it's designed in the same way as the older like Pentium 4 style with the heat spreader just attached onto it. Down here we've got the CMOS battery. Oddly enough, there's space for 2. The actual connector for the remote management card. This huge array of transistors. I'm not really sure what this is for. This probably has something to do with the remote management. But I mean, this big. I mean, I've never seen this on a motherboard, but hey, who knows. Moving along, you got a diagnostic LED array, 2-digit, pretty standard. And then we've got the eUSB Discon module part. This is screwed in. Let's take the screw out. And this is actually just a standard USB flash drive. Like, if you look at it, it's actually got a normal internal 2.0 header. And Intel says this is a standard. It's pretty hard to find these things. My Intel ITX motherboard actually has this. I'm not using it, but it does actually specifically have the standoff and everything in place so that you can just pop in one of these modules. This is 2 gig, labeled obviously for Riverbed. It says it's industrial grade too, but to read this, I built something, so we'll get into that in a bit. Lastly, on the board under another heatsink is this Intel 82801. It's a PCI bridge chip. I'm not really sure why they're using this. It does things like it's got like an Ethernet port and things like that. I'm thinking they're using it as the controller for the serial ATA, because it does say it actually has an integrated 4-drive controller, but the thing is, it's actually IDE. It's not new enough to have serial ATA. So unless the drives are functioning as IDE drives at the hardware level, through the bridge or whatever, I don't know why they're using this thing. You'd think this is where like a RAID controller would be, but I'm not sure. I mean, I know serial ATA drives can function as IDE hard drives, or ATA I should say, but I don't know. It seems weird that they'd be using this. This thing has like USB ports and stuff on it, so it could be somehow providing these. I don't know. I'm at a loss on this one. It just seems like a really weird thing. I was really expecting to see a RAID controller, but there you go. And that's the really high density connector that goes off to the serial ATA with the power as well. Another USB header. But yeah, I'm not really sure what that exactly is being used for. But there you go. That's the end of it. I've run out of boards. Oh, the only other thing here is the gigantic heatsink, which was a little dirty underneath it. But nice chunk of copper. I'll put that in the big pile of copper stuff I'm going to sell on eBay. And that's it. It's too bad this thing didn't work, but it's one of those things that would just use way too much power for me to actually want to keep in my place, so oh well. It was an interesting thing to take apart, and those hard drives made it more than worthwhile, though. Here's the USB module again. My hands are all white from the rubbing alcohol I was using to clean the processor. This little board I soldered together, all it does is change the 4-pin header that this thing uses into a standard Type B USB port. So I can just pop it into my computer, and there you go. It reads it. On the board, or sorry, on the actual drive, I found a Linux install. It's all labeled Riverbed. So I'm assuming they actually roll their own Linux flavor for this. I might try booting maybe even my router board off it, since like I said, I actually have the built-in socket for this. Just to see if it'll run on another piece of hardware. Maybe I can actually find out some more information about where it came from and stuff. But right now, all I can do is plug it into my Mac, see the file system. Doesn't really have too much of interest. Like I said, it's only a 2 gig drive. I did check the 250 gig serial ATA drives. All 4 are mirrored. Like when I first got it, I checked it. All 4 are mirrored. None of them had anything interesting on it. It looks like some form of caching, but it was all just boring stuff. There really wasn't anything on it. And this thing had been used a lot. The hard drives all had like 20,000 hours on them, but nothing of interest. I've taken the eUSB disk-on module from the Riverbed, and I've just stuck it inside my Intel motherboard. This is a DN2800MT. I use this as my router. It's an Atom-based motherboard. I'm going to go ahead and see if this thing will boot off it. It may not have any support for the hardware on it, but we'll at least give it a try. Okay, starting to boot up. Oh, it's loading grub. It's saying press any key to continue. Riverbed. Okay, it's attempting to boot. It's a ext2 file system. I actually copied off the disk image and put it back at one point, so I did already know that. I wanted to just check out the actual hardware on the eUSB drive, see how fast it was and whatnot. Copyright Dave Jones. I don't think it's the same one. No luck with the default. The version I think was 5 something. I've since rebooted and I'm trying the version 4 operating system. That's choice 0 in Grub. And it looks like it's stopping right at the same spot. More or less. The previous version stopped at the EHCI host controller, I believe.